Today, it's almost exactly 20 years ago since at the 1995 Beijing World Women Conference, the UN declared that 70% of the world's poor are women. We live in a world where poor people are getting poorer and rich people are getting richer, which means that women constitute 70% of a much larger group of poor people, and that women are structurally on the wrong end of the balance, a phenomenon called the feminization of poverty. Why are poor people getting poorer, and why are a disproportionate number of them women? Both problems have the same cause. Our mechanisms for distributing wealth are not working. Governments collect taxes, and they provide basic services and guarantee human rights, right? Wrong. Not all governments are equally willing and able to do so. And then on the other side, you have wealthy individuals and corporations who are not always equally inclined to pay taxes. So if you're on the receiving end, that means you could be waiting for a long time. And I've spoken to people in shanty towns that were literally waiting for social housing 20 to 30 years. So I'm thinking to myself, there must be a quicker way to success. And there must be some way in which I can contribute as a person. And I think I found it. I believe we have to move beyond the issue of wealth distribution, and we have to bring women to the center of wealth creation. Who creates wealth? Big corporations, yes, but also entrepreneurs, like myself. Women entrepreneurs are the fastest rising group of entrepreneurs worldwide, and they're catching up very quickly. There are already 2 economies in which female entrepreneurs outnumber male counterparts, Ghana and Nigeria. However, there's also a challenge. Women entrepreneurs attract less financing in all the stages of their entrepreneurial journey. And the total combined funding gap for female entrepreneurs is estimated at $300 billion. That is half the GDP of the Netherlands. And that means that these women are not realizing their full potential economically, socially, and personally. It also means that the very people who could tip this balance are being kept from doing so. And that is why I started an investment fund that specifically invests in women. But I can't do it by myself. We all need to invest in women entrepreneurs. So, why does this funding gap exist? I thought to myself. And there are many, many reasons why women are not attracting the type of funding that they need, depending on the context and the legal system where they work or the type of business. But there was one universal thing that really struck me, and that is that women know more women, just like men know more men, which in itself is of course not a problem. However, combine that with the fact that there are fewer women investors, in fact there are hardly any at all. That means that as a woman, your chance of knowing an investor decreases significantly. So it becomes a matter of statistics. And then I thought, okay, let's go back another step. Why aren't more women involved in investment? And I think that's where we're touching the psychology of things. Let me ask you, when you think of these things, business, investment, and wealth, do you automatically associate them with empathy, community, and generosity? I suppose not. And you know what? Business, investment, and wealth, we generally associate them with being male. Whereas these values, empathy, community, and generosity, we see them as feminine values. And there's one thing that stands directly in opposition of these values, and that's greed. And we've come to associate these things with greed. And it's wrong. Because what is business all about? It's about solving other people's problems. The phone in your pocket, it solves a problem for you because you can be reached, or maybe you found your way to the venue with it. Your clothes, your shoes, they solve a problem for you because you needed something appropriate to wear. Solving other people's problems requires what? Empathy. Now to the community aspect. Women for ages all over the world have been coming together to form saving circles. And I know a great example in Uganda where 150 women meet. And they can borrow from the group at an interest rate of 8%, whereas at the bank, they would pay 22%. How can they do that? How can they have such a low interest rate? Because they all know each other, and they trust each other to pay back. And they do. They have a 0 default rate. That's something the World Bank can be extremely jealous of. In fact, these saving groups are probably the first type of investment that we know. So hello guys, we invented investment. And girls, we need to reclaim this stuff, and we need to turn investment into empowerment. Let me ask you another thing. Do you have money in the bank? I'm sure you do, otherwise you wouldn't have been able to pay for your ticket today. Your money is being invested as we speak. Not just the stuff in the savings account. Anything you have on the bank is being invested. How much is your bank paying you for that favor? 1%? 2%? Maybe. You might as well be putting your money in a sock. But what if I tell you that you could not only be making a lot more money, you could be investing in the change that you want and the things that you're passionate about? Once you make that decision to become an active investor, it's easy. There's loads of information online. You can start small with crowdfunding, or join a fund, or connect to an investor club. They're mostly men, which is good, because that way you can be the person to talk to them about the value of investing in women. And you can be the link to the women in your network. So invest. And you could also invest in a friend or a family member, which is a great way to make a difference. And it's actually how many people become investors in the first place. Now back to why I specifically want you to invest in women. Women reinvest 90% of their income into their families and their communities. Women, when they earn a decent living, have less children and spend more on their education. Women are great at paying back loans. And all of this has been proven by a very successful model, microfinance, which has shown tremendous financial and social returns. But we're ready for the next step. We don't only need to invest in the women in poverty. We need to also invest in those women who are a few steps ahead of the game. These women can grow to become the role models and the employers that they can be. Small, medium-sized enterprises are extremely important for an economy. We can simply not afford not to have these businesses. A recent study by the International Finance Consortium concluded that by bridging the funding gap for women entrepreneurs, we would boost per capita income with 1.1% annually. For a country like Brazil, it would mean that their per capita income will wind up 28% higher by 2030. What this means is that if we manage to reduce the share of women in poverty, we manage to reduce poverty, period. But what we can achieve if we can massively scale women's entrepreneurship, we can start to reverse the trend of the feminization of poverty. If we manage to capitalize on women's entrepreneurial skills, and if we can grow the wealth both on the side of the investor and on the side of the entrepreneur, and if we can imagine these women growing their businesses and becoming employers and hiring more people and then selling their business and then reinvesting that money in other women-owned businesses, what we can do then is we can eradicate poverty. And this is the investment proposition I want you to think about. Every time you invest in a woman-owned business, no matter how big or small your contribution is. And I want you to consider that by investing in her, you are investing in our global community, and ultimately, you're investing in yourself. Thank you.